So if you ever played a massive multiplayer online game or any online game at all, you know that you have a client and a server. And something very important that people don't used to talk about is that the client and the server, they need to connect, they need to communicate between each other. And this is one of the most important parts that you need to define if you want to make an online game. And this is exactly what we want to do in this video. And yes, my friend, this is the second video of the series where I'm gonna make a massive multiplayer online game. And just a quick disclaimer, because in the last video, it was the first video, and I was supposed to publish a video every day. I had some problems this weekend, but don't worry, I'm gonna keep doing it, and I'll post today and yesterday and tomorrow, I'm sorry, and things we're gonna go right. But before we go to the video and start talking about the content, start talking about the client and the server, and I will start drawing stuff here anyway while we talk. I made a video, I made a script that edits my video for me. This is like a random thing, but I'm gonna try this in this video. So leave in the comment if you like it, the cuts, the program, the bot that I wrote specifically do cuts in the video. So leave in the comment. Anyways, in the last video, people talked about how crazy and bad idea it is to make a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. And of course, I know and I agree with everyone that talked about that, because, well, this is something that I don't recommend for beginners or intermediates or even experienced people. But the question is, and I'm gonna leave the explanation in the description because I'm not gonna say that again, but well, I'm doing this mainly for fun and as a challenge. And well, that's okay. I don't care if I, like, in a year or two, I'm not gonna have this finished. I'm probably gonna have it because I have a solid plan in my mind that I'm gonna explain in the following videos. But don't worry about that. I'm gonna leave the explanation in the description of this video if you are interested and if you think that this is a terrible idea. But don't worry. So let me jump to the video and we're gonna start planning this, because as I said in a previous video, if you for some reason haven't watched it, I'm gonna work up to an hour a day, every day on this project. So I can't do more than an hour in this video, okay? So, and of course I'm gonna cut things, as I said, with a bot, so you're not gonna have to watch an hour. The client, how an online game works, you have a client side that is basically someone else, someone computer running your project. So I have here a computer, and you may want to have like your character here with a sword, playing the game and stuff like that. This is the client, okay? So I'm gonna put a circle here, not a circle, I'm gonna do something like that. This is the client, right? And you have the other side, and you can have multiple clients, of course, and you have the other side that is the server. And I'm gonna do, I don't know why, but many people used to do like a server, like a bunch of circles here. I don't know, I'm gonna do it like that. It's a bunch of pancakes. It's actually a super tasty hamburger. Anyways, this is the server, okay? But the point of this video here is that we have a communication between the client and the server. So the client is sending message to the server. So here's a message, and the server is sending message to the client as well. And of course, we have like a lot of clients. So we have like, we have n clients, and we used to have one server. Of course, in advanced online stuff, we do have more than one server, but I will keep things simple in this project, and I only have one server. But the question here, there's two questions that is very important to answer before starting writing code and starting to create the game itself. The first message is, what kind of message are you sending or are you receiving from the server or to the server. What is a message? What is that? It's like a WhatsApp message. It's like, hey, what's going on? Hey, my name is Guilherme, and what? No, you need to define what is a message. This is something very important that people don't realize about it, and they do very sketchy code, very bad and not efficient code when it comes to multiplayer, because they don't know what is a message. They don't define that. They don't define the limits. So you're gonna define what is a message and the content that you're gonna send between every message. But there is another thing that is very important as well, and we need to define is what is the flow of the message. What is the flow? So I'm gonna explain what is a flow. This is what we're going to talk about in this video specifically. We're going to build the flow of the message, but think about it with me real quick. Let's say that you have an internet connection, like your internet, and your internet connection is bad. So you call your internet provider, and then you realize that they have a bot in the other side of the line. Or even better, you go to the website of your internet provider, and there's a bot that is going to chat with you. Okay, what is the first thing that you do when you enter, when you start talking to the bot? And I know it's super boring to talk to a bot, but in this case here, it's not a human versus a bot, it's a bot versus another bot, because the client and the server, they are both bots. And of course, there's a human playing the game, but the communication is between two programs, two computer programs, okay? So don't worry about that. So what happens when you enter in a website to talk? Probably there's a window, something like that. Here we go. With a bunch of messages. And the first thing they require you to say is like start. There's a weird stuff that they say. I don't remember which side is the message. Let me confirm that real quick. I think the message that you say, anyway, it doesn't matter. The first thing is like a start. So you say start, and then the bot answers, what is your name? Your name. And then you answer to the bot. My name is complicated, I'm not gonna type everything. And then the bot answers something else, like your ID. And then you answer with something. And then, but what I want you to realize here, what I want you to understand is there's a flow, there's a specific path that you need to follow to communicate to the bot. And this is very important. You need to have a flow in your game, and you can have different flows. For example, in this video, we're gonna talk about the login flow, which is basically, you need to, let me create here, communication flows. So let me put this in a header. I'll make that full screen. Put that in bold. And the first flow that we can think about is the login. That is basically we know what is the login, okay? I think I don't need to explain that. And we need to understand what they're gonna do, what is gonna happen when the client connects to a server, what kind of message they send to the server, and what kind of message this server we're gonna reply to it. Because once we have this very well planned, we're gonna be a piece of cake to actually implement this kind of data structures, okay? So I'm not gonna talk about what is a message, but I'm gonna do a little bit of a spoiler here before we start talking about this specific flow. A message, and this is gonna be the talk about the next video. But a message will basically be a header with a fixed size, probably 2 bytes. But I'm not gonna type the size here. And a payload. What is that? Well, every message you're gonna have a header. and the header of the message is going to be fixed. And the header is basically the subject or the title of the message. So if you want to say your name, the title of your message, you're going to be like your name. If you want to say the character information, the title of the message is going to be something about that. And the payload will be the data. So let's say that I want to send my name to my server. I will say a header. I'm going to put a specific header like username, and then I'm going to send the payload a string containing my name. This is kind of what you're going to do for every single message that you're going to have in this project, okay? But I'm not going to talk about that in this video because we're going to have to define what is the size of every payload, what is the size of the header, what is the content, and so on. But let's focus in the flow for now. And for that, I'm going to create some graphs. Some tables, I'm sorry. So let me insert here a table, probably gonna have to do like 4 by 6, I don't know. And then in this table, are you gonna define the time, the description, the client, and the server. Okay. Let me put here some colors just to make things a little bit more pleasant to look at. Here you go. What is that? Let me explain to you. The time is basically like the moment, the message that you're gonna send. So the first message is time 1, the second message is time 2, the third message is time 3. And if you have 3 types of third messages, for example, you say your name as the first message, and then the second message you're gonna be like, hey, your name is valid, or hey, your name is not valid. We can repeat the time here. So this is just a control for us. So we're probably gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. The description, of course, is something that we can type later on to describe what are we doing here. And the client and server is basically to figure out like if the client or if the server that is sending a specific message. And then we're gonna type the header of this message here. Okay, but don't worry, you're gonna things are gonna be a little bit more clear when we start writing this table. Okay, so the first thing is, how do you accept a connection with a client? What needs to happen? What is a client? What is a client trying to talk to the server, trying to communicate to the server? The first thing, it may be a great idea to ask the client, let me change the order here because it's gonna be a little bit confusing. So server and client. Okay, the client can start saying hello to the server. So hello. This is a message, and this is a header that you say. So when a client connects, and remember the client is a computer, the first message that the client is gonna send to the server is hello, to say, hey, I need to connect to you. And the server, you're gonna receive this hello, and he can proceed to something else. And what kind of stuff we need to do when the client attempts to log in? We need to do basically 2 things here. The first thing, which is the obvious thing, is the log. It's to log the client with a username and a password. Okay, that's the first thing. But there's another thing that is even more important than user and password itself, which is to validate that this client is actually our client. In other words, this client, this machine here, this specific game that is running here, we need to validate that this game is our game, because otherwise any people anywhere in the world with any random piece of software will be able to connect to our server, and then may crash the server, may do some unexpected behaviors and stuff like that. So we need to validate. And a good way to validate is to pass a message. So I'm gonna type for now validate when the server receives from the client the message hello, the server is gonna return a validate in message. And again, we're gonna define the payloads and what kind of data every message you're gonna have. But validate in, a good way to validate a message is like if the client is to ask the client to answer a question that only me, the server, and the client knows the answer. Because then if the client replies to me the answer, I can check if the message is a valid one. For example, the server can send to a client something like a string, a random string, like ABCD 1 2 3, and this is a question for the client, and the client, the answer for the question may be like run an algorithm in the string, or like an encryption or a decryption algorithm and stuff like that, or it can be something very simple. Of course, you don't want to have like a simple stuff like that in your final game, but for us here it's okay. Like put this string, the sequence here in the reverse. For example, ABCD 1 2 3, maybe 3 2 1 DC BA. If the clients reply this sequence, we know that there's a very high chance that the client is our client, is the game itself, so we can accept it. So you're gonna send a validate win. So send a random string to validate, and the client, we need to reply us, and I'm gonna call it validate out. I need a little bit more space here probably for the server header, with the string decrypted. Okay, and the client, we're gonna do that. You're gonna run some algorithm in the string that the server gonna send, and then you're gonna go back to the server. And once the server receives that, it can do two things. That is close the asset, that say, hey, this is not the correct string, please get out, you are not my game. Or they can say, yeah, that's the correct string, let's proceed to the next step. So if the server denies that, we can make like access, oops, I don't know how to deny it. Let me reduce the font size here because it's a little bit too much and you're gonna have problems. Okay, I think that's good to go. 10. So it's gonna deny the access to the client, and that's gonna end the application. Close the client connection. Okay, there's an option for the server, but there's another option here. So I'm gonna put the time 4. That's why the time is important here. I'm repeating the same time. Like access, you can provide. You can continue with the validation because there's a valid stuff. Okay, let me put like invalid decrypted key. But if the key is valid, we can ask the client for the login credential. So login credentials. We can ask that for the client. Let me increase it a little bit. Okay. So if the access is okay, if we manage to do a good access, we can ask for the client for the login credentials. This is gonna be huge. So let me add a bunch of rows here. Here we go. And the client may send two different kinds of messages here once they validated, because, well, important here, again, I already said that, but I'm gonna say it again. This, we're gonna be like, hey, you are a valid client, hey, you are not a valid client, please get out here. So this is where we're gonna validate this kind of stuff here. Okay, it's very important. So in the moment 5, the client can do two things. Okay, logging underscore log or logging underscore create. The log here is basically like user plus password, and the login create, you're gonna be user plus password plus email address, because we want to create an account. So this is the validation step, like that we do. Hey, let's say that you are a valid client. Let's say that you are something that we can communicate to. Let me actually do here. Let me merge the cells. Client application alt. Let me do it in bold and put in the center. So this step is gonna be the authentication from our client. Okay, very important step here. But then let me put in a color here. Here we go. Then once we pass this phase, let me do another row here. Merge and login or create an account. It's another state that we have once we have an authentication working here. So let me put in a color. Not this one. This one. Here you go. So the client can create a new account, or he can log into an existing one. Login, or login create. Okay. So for all these messages, we're gonna send a specific payload that you're gonna describe later on. So 2 moments here the client can do, and the server, once they have this back, it can return 2 different things. The first one is like wrong logging, or we can do like bad logging. Okay, or we can do bad create. That is basically saying, hey, in the login, user wrong password problem, wrong password, or username does not exist. Okay, in the bad create, we can say username or email already exists. Okay, this is basically the kind of logging that we want. This is a step like, hey, when the server sends that to you, it means something that you can do another something about it. You can go back to the previous state. You can send another login. We can do like another stuff. You can go ahead and send another user plus password, or user plus password plus email, and we're gonna verify that again. Okay, so are you actually I need to define line, or in the same thing we can create like login success that say, hey, good news, we accepted you. You are now part of the stuff, okay? Because you succeeded in the login process. We can send that as well. It's let me change the colors here. I like to put some very like clear and informative colors. That's okay. If the login is a success, in other words, if you do, hey, that's correct, we accept you, don't worry about that, that's good, all good here. We can proceed to the next step. That is basically an end. The login phase, you're gonna end here. So I'm gonna create a new URL below. Gonna merge those cells. End of login. Here you go. So it may sound a little bit complicated, but having this kind of flows here, you're gonna actually help you to develop a better application, because you're gonna understand like this is the kind of message that the user needs to send to the server, and this is the kind of message that the server can reply to the user. So there's a bunch of options here, and if you define that, you can you know what is your flow and what are you doing. Okay. The next flow that we need to do is like the in-game flow. And this one, we're gonna add a bunch of other states later on. Don't worry about that, but we need to start somewhere. So I'm gonna start typing some stuff here. After the login, the client is already in the game. Okay. So let me actually put this as a second header. Here we go. Let me copy this this table because we're gonna use the same thing here, the same table structure here. We're gonna use that for the in-game flow. So we can start thinking about what kind of messages do the client can send to the server. Okay, the first thing that the client can send is like the client can require the data of a specific user. They can say, hey, there's a user here in the game, and we're gonna define that later on, but the client will have to ask for the server, like, hey, there's a user here in the map, but I don't know his nickname, I don't know the skin that he is using, I don't know the color of the I don't know, the armor, I don't know if the user if that user is level 1, level 10, or something like that. Okay, so we can do some basic requisitions here first, that the client will say request user data to say, hey, please send me data about this user. Send me data like saying that this user, what kind of data the user will have. Will pass the user ID, probably. Okay, and this is something that I haven't talked about yet, but it's important to start mentioning. The player itself, the one that the client you see in the screen, will be just another user. Okay, so the player, the client, will need to request user data for himself. Okay, they need to say, hey, please send me where I am. So in other words, the client will save its variables, will save the level and stuff like that in the server. Okay. So the server you're gonna return. Oops! I deleted everything by accident. Good lord. You're gonna return the user data. Okay. The server gonna reply the client with the user data. Okay, so this is a state. This is something that we can do. There's another something, and now because until here the logging phase, it's very linear, the amount of stuff that you can do. So first you need to say hello, and then you need to validate, and then you need to have like you need to say, hey, we accepted you or we denied you. And then we have a login that you can create or log into an existing account. And this is very linear, but in the game flow, it's not linear. You basically are gonna have a bunch of random stuff happening every time. Okay, it's important to mention that. So let me merge those cells, and so basic requisition, we're gonna request the user data. We're gonna have like UDP data transfer. Okay, that is basically some protocols that you're gonna define right now about what kind of UDP data will my client send to the server, and what kind of UDP data will my server send to my client. And this is important because in the previous video we said, so we can, if you go back here in the server architecture, the technology here, we're gonna use UDP to send and receive players' positions and rotations, and TCP for everything else. In other words, in the UDP protocols here, you're gonna have like a send position and a get position, something like that. So the client you send to the server, like client, let me say like client persistent data. Let me think about. I need to think in a name. I need to come up with a name for that. Because it can be positions. Okay, position. So the client, we're gonna send in the first step the positions to the server. Okay, so client sends the position rotation, animation, and so on for the server to store. Okay, and the server may send, and this is not a different state. So I will actually put like this. I'm not gonna make a flow here. I'm gonna put like nothing here, because it's not an order. There is no time. There is no specific time that this action is gonna happen. Okay, but the server, we're gonna answer the client sometimes to the user positions as well. User positions. Let me make like client position. I don't think there's an S here because it's the only one client. But here, the server, when the server sends positions from UDP to the client, it's the position to for every other user in the game. Okay, I'm not sure if you should send like every user or a different message to every user. I think it's important to send every message, a message to every user, like for every connected player, send this message with the player ID and its position and so on. Okay, so this is basically the kind of message that the server you're gonna send from UDP to the client. Okay, we need to define as well the other stuff. For example, when the player attacks the message system, the chat system, because, well, yes, we're gonna have a chat in the game, so we need to define that as well. So let me add some roles below, a bunch of. I wish I had a. Can I copy and paste this a bunch of times to create more rows? No, I can't. Definitely not. So yes, I do know how to do that. Let me merge that as well, and I'm gonna make chat in-game chat messaging. Okay. We can't here. This is the time that if you want a player to send private messages to another player, we can do it, and we can, if we want to send to everyone else, we can do it as well. Okay, so I think it's a great idea to allow private messaging. And again, we don't have a time for this because it can be like any time. So we can send like a client chat underscore message that sends a global message. Okay, send, and we can have another like chat message send to that sends a message to a specific user. Okay, so send to, we're gonna send a message to a specific user. It's a private message. It's not a global as this one is. So we can do it. And then we can receive messages from user. So chat message res. I'm gonna do from, receive from. It's a huge thing. I think I don't need to do message to do. Message send. I'm not gonna do chat prefix. I'm gonna only do message. Message receive from, and we're gonna have message receive private. That is only like receives a global message from a user, and here receives a private message from a user. Here you go. So we can send messages to everyone in the logged into the server, or we can send a message to a specific user. And in the same way, we can receive message that is global, and we can receive a message that is private. Okay, receive global maybe and private. Okay, it will also send the user. It doesn't matter, but we can have this kind of protocols to handle messaging in the game itself. which is like pretty cool. I don't think we need something else to do a message system, honestly. This is only send and receive, and that's about it. And hey, William, how we pass like the message, the content, the user that sent that message? We're gonna do that in a payload, because as I said in the beginning of the video, we are only defining the header in this video. So everything here, every name, the hello, validate, and stuff like that is a header. Is only a header. In the next video, we're gonna define the payloads to every header. Okay, so it's important to mention that. I think that's it. So let me insert a row below, merge this. And here we can start like having some fun. For example, we can say to we can make the client send an action. For example, when the client attacks, we can send a message to the server that is propagated to every other client connected. And then that way, if a client attacks, every other client, we're gonna see this thing in action. So we're gonna make user actions for a new messaging system. So let me put this in the center, make it italic, and change the background color again. Now we need to have some orders here, like, hey, when the player do an attack, we need to propagate that to the others. Okay, so I'm gonna do action nil. So this, when we send action nil, we basically like the user, for example, the player attacked, or I don't know. Yes, attacked. We can do that for attack and so on. And we're gonna have a payload here later on. This, actually, I think like drop the item or so on. I'm not sure if you should create new layers for drop the item, but actually, I'm not gonna create this here. And when we have this everything implemented, because as you are seeing, this is a lot of stuff. This is not easy to implement. You're gonna spend a good amount of time implementing this kind of stuff. So I think it's better to just do this first, and then we think in something else. I think that's better. Okay. So action new, action from user, and when the player sends an action to the server will actually propagate the client, the player action to all other connected clients. Okay, and this is the header then the server you're gonna use to propagate this kind of stuff. Okay, so I think that's basically everything that we need for now. I think we need like a log out request, and we also need like a request user inventory and stuff like that, because well, I think that's a good option to have. But I think that's everything for now, because honestly this is already a lot of stuff. Let me delete this row. Here you go. This is already a lot of stuff. This is not trivial. This is not something that you're gonna finish in like a day. And again we need to define what is the content, what is the payload of every message that we send and receive. So that's gonna take a lot of time. So it's better to, for now, just end it here and implement this kind of stuff before. Okay, so yeah, now we have a very basic flow of how the server and the client will communicate to each other. Okay, let me actually put it here a little bit better. I'm gonna document this, okay, because it's important. The flow is basically the order and the basic It's not basically, it's the order and the basic rules behind the messages from the client and server. Message communication from the client, between the client and the server. Okay, so I think that's it. We have like a header and a payload to do it, and we define the flow here, and this is basically the flow, like the login flow, and we have the in-game flow. Let me just rename it to login flow to make it a little bit better to understand. And now we can start writing some code about it to define this, how the payload will look like to everything that we do. Okay, but this is gonna be a subject to another video, because this video is already long and we did a lot of stuff. And yes, trust me, this is very important to do before you start typing code, random code, because if you don't know what you are doing, you're gonna have problems. Okay, so this is the second video. In the next video, we're gonna define what is the message, what is a payload, what kind of data we send in the hello. Do you need to send a data? And yes, I changed this thing. Do you need to send a data, or it can just be a header? Validate in, we need to send a string. How are we gonna send the string? And validate out, how this we're gonna do. Okay, so we need to define the kind of data that every header here we're gonna send and receive. Okay, actually send, because then both sides of the application we'll know how to interpret this kind of data. Okay, so that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel, consider subscribing. I'm gonna leave also the link for the Discord in the description, and I see you in the next video.